Welcome to the Exam 2 review project video for the forest area problem. As a reminder, this project is designed to be similar to what you're going to see on Exam 2 and will help you practice for that, but it is not the actual exam itself. For this project, you're going to need access to a computer that has the Windows version of Microsoft 365. So if you're using a Mac, you'll want to follow the instructions we have on the CS101 website to use Windows Virtual Desktop. To get going with our project here, you can see that beneath the video, we've posted instructions on what you'll need to do for the assignment. It might be helpful to print these out or have them open on your phone as you work along with the project. We have some data files that we'll need to download, and then we've also provided a solution file that will allow you to compare your work against what you should have for this project. Let's start off by downloading the data files. I'm going to put these on my desktop so that they're easy to find. So I'm going to right click on the data files link here, and I'm going to choose the option to save link as. The exact text might vary a little bit depending on what browser you're using. I'm going to go ahead and save the file to my desktop by making sure that I have my desktop selected, and then I'll click save. On my desktop, you can see that we have the zip file with our data files for this assignment. I'm going to extract it by right-clicking on it and going to extract all. And then I'll just click the extract button. And you can see I now have this folder with the contents from the zip. Let's go into there and see what we have. So I'll just double-click on the folder. And you can see that there's 4 files that are detailed in the instructions. We have this chart.xlsx workbook for Excel. That's going to include a chart that we will add to the PowerPoint presentation we're going to be doing towards the latter part of the project. We have 2 XML files, country.xml and forest.xml, that we're going to import into Access. And then we have a graphic, forest.jpg, that we're also going to use inside of PowerPoint. So let's go ahead and close this for now. I'll start things off by opening up Microsoft Access. So if we go to the Start menu, you'll be able to find Access there someplace, depending on how your particular Start menu is laid out. For me here, it's a button right under the Pin section. And I'm going to want to choose to create a blank database. So we'll click the button for that. And I need to give my file a name. So I'm going to follow the pattern that's listed in the instructions. And that's going to be exam review 2 underscore FAP for forest area problem, underscore my last name, and then underscore and my first name. Obviously, you should go and put your own name in there where prompted. And we'll just end with the .accdb extension. If you don't like the directory that it's listed for where it's going to put your file, you can click on the folder icon and you can go and choose to put it someplace else. So I'm just going to put this one on the desktop so that I have everything readily accessible. I clicked on my desktop and I'm going to click OK, and then I'll click Create. When we open up Access here, it gives us this empty table 1. We really don't want that, so I'm just going to go ahead and click the X button in its tab to close that out. Let's go ahead and import the databases from the XML files that we downloaded. For that, I'm going to go to the External Data ribbon. Under New Data Source, I'm going to choose From File, and we'll go to grab from an XML file. I'll need to click the Browse button to indicate where my files are located here. And we went and put those on our desktop. So I'm going to go into this Data Files ER2 FAP folder. And then we'll just do these one at a time. Doesn't really matter what order, but since I said countries.xml first in the instructions, I'm going to do that. So I'll select the file and click Open, and then we'll click OK. And when we go and import, we want to bring in structure and data. So the default option is OK. We'll just go ahead and click the OK button. And then we need to click Close to finish out the wizard. So you can see we have this countries table now. and it's got information on the country abbreviation, country name, the region abbreviation, the land area, which is in square kilometers, and the population from 2020 for that country. We'll close out that table, and then we'll go back on the external ribbon here and grab our other table. So we'll go back under New Data Source, from File, XML File, and then we'll browse, and this time we're going to grab forest.xml. I'll just double click on it rather than having to click the Open button, and then we'll click OK. Same deal as before, we're going to import structure and data, so we'll click OK, and then we'll click Close to get out of the Get External Data wizard. You can see we have our new table here. Let's just take a quick look. We'll open it up. And you can see that we have our country abbreviation, and this corresponds with the abbreviations that were back in the countries table. We have the year of our data. This is going to be either 1995, 2000, 2005, 2010, 2015, or 2020. And then we have the area of that country that was forested in square kilometers again. We'll go ahead and click on the X to close out of that table now. In addition to the two tables that we imported, we need to create another to keep track of the different regions of the world. And we're going to build this on our own. So let's go to the Create ribbon, and we're going to click on the Table Design button here, because we're going to make this table from scratch. If we look at the instructions, we can see that there are two fields that we're going to have in this table. One to keep track of the region abbreviation, and another for the actual name of the region. So let's go ahead and create those two fields. Our first one, we're going to call region ABBRV, using the name that's given in the instructions. And here, if we go and take a look at the next step in our instructions, we can see that the region abbreviations that are given are all text. In fact, we're looking at between 2 and 4 characters worth of text. So for the different data types, short text is going to be the best option here, because short text is intended for cases where we have less than 255 characters worth of text. With short text, I could actually go and adjust down the field size. Right now I know that I've got at most 4 characters, so I could actually go and set the field size to be 4. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it at the default value. There's really no harm in making it bigger than it is going to be at this point in time. And that will save us a little bit of effort in case, we end up with a 5-character abbreviation down the line or something like that. We also need a field to keep track of the region name. So let's go ahead and make that one. And in fact, the field's name is supposed to be region name. Again, this one is going to be of the type short text. We have a little bit longer string here. But again, there's not really any reason to change the field size to something shorter. So we're just going to leave it at the default of 255 characters. The instructions tell us that we should go and designate a good primary key. So a primary key should be the field or column that goes and contains values that are going to be unique that we can use to identify the contents of a particular row. In our case here, the values that are in both of these fields should be unique. We shouldn't have 2 different regions that have the same exact name, and we shouldn't have 2 different regions that have the same abbreviation. Between the two options, region abbreviation is going to be our better choice for the primary key. And the reason why, in part, is because if we go back and look at the countries table, we can see that there's actually a region abbreviation field there that uses the abbreviation. That's going to make it really easy for us to connect our data together with relationships. But even if we didn't have that, the abbreviation is still going to normally be our better choice just because it's shorter. It's going to actually perform a little bit better when it goes to try to match things up because it is shorter. Conciseness does help with performance. So we're going to go ahead and make region abbreviation be our primary key. So once we're clicked into that row for that field, we can just click the primary key button, and then you can see we get the little key icon that's going to show up beside it. Let's go ahead and click the Save button, to go ahead and save this new table, and we want to call it regions. And then we'll click OK. Now that our table has been created, let's go and put some data into it. I'm going to click on my ribbon here under the button to go and switch to Datasheet View. And this is going to allow me to actually enter the values. So that I can see things a little bit better, I'm just going to resize the width of these columns here so that they're going to be wide enough to fit my text. I just want to go one by one through the different rows that are listed in the instructions, typing them in. We do want to make sure that we spell things correctly here, especially for the region abbreviation part, because if we have things misspelled, they're not going to work correctly when we try to tie the pieces of data together across our different tables. Let's just go ahead and start typing things in. For our first row, we have the region abbreviation ANT, and that is for Antarctica. I can just hit the Tab key on my keyboard to switch between fields and go down to the next row. We have CAM for Central America, CB for the Caribbean, EAS for East Asia, ESAF for Eastern-Southern Africa, EUR for Europe, NAM for North America, NAF for Northern Africa, OC for Oceania, SAM for South America, SEAS for Southeast Asia, WCAF for Western-Central Africa, and WCAS for Western-Central Asia. And then I'll just go ahead and tab out of that last row. If I go and take a look at things here, especially once I click out of the new row, you can see that I have 13 records, and that matches what the instructions tell me I should have. So looks like I've got all the data entered that I need. I'm going to go ahead and close out of my table now. And we're just going to say that we want to save changes to the layout. That's basically just because I made those columns a little bit wider so I could see things better. When we go and actually tab out of a row, we're actually saving that data to the database at that time. But we're going to go ahead and save the changes for the layout just so that if we go back in here, it's a little bit easier to read our columns and their data. Next, we want to create some relationships to help us tie together the records that we have across our different tables. For this, we want to go to the Database Tools ribbon, and we'll click the Relationships button. You can see here that when the Relationships window opens, we don't have anything in our Relationships window actually shown yet. We actually just don't have any relationships at this time. That's why there's nothing displayed here. For us to be able to create our relationships, we need to go and add the tables that are going to be involved to this window. There's two different ways that we can do this. One is by using the Add Tables pane that's displayed here. We can go and click on a table that we want, and we can choose to add this table. The other way is just by dragging the tables over from our Objects pane on the left side of the screen. So now we have all three of our tables listed here because we're going to need relationships between them all. Taking a look at the instructions, we're told that we're supposed to enforce referential integrity, but we should not enable cascade updates or cascade deletes. The instructions give us two relationships that we need to make. The first one's going to be between the regions table and the countries table. So I'm just going to position those two tables so that they're next to each other. And if I take a look between regions and countries here, I want to identify the field that exists in both of them. Oftentimes, they're going to have the same name for those fields, but it may not always be the case that that's true. In our situation, though, it is actually true. You can see that we have this region abbreviation field in the regions table, and there's also a region abbreviation in the countries table. So we're going to make our relationship on that particular field. Under the regions table, I'm going to click to select the region abbreviation field, and then I'm going to hold down my mouse and just drag it over and drop it on top of the region abbreviation field in the countries table. That's going to open up the edit relationships window here, which will be already populated with the tables that we're making our relationship on and the fields that they're going to be between. We're told to enforce referential integrity in the instructions. So I'm going to click the box for that, but I'm going to leave the boxes unchecked for cascade updates and cascade deletes. I'll go ahead and click create. And then I'm going to make my other relationship, which is supposed to be between the countries table and the forest table. If we take a look here, we can see that the country abbreviation field exists in both. So I'm going to drag from the country abbreviation field in the countries table to the country abbreviation field in the forest table. And again, I'm going to enforce referential integrity, but not choose the options for cascading updates or deletes. We'll click create, and we'll get our relationship lines there. The fact that these lines are sort of bolded and we have these indications, in this case, this is telling us this is a one-to-many relationship, is something that's going to tip us off that we have referential integrity turned on. If we didn't have referential integrity, the line would not appear bolded and it wouldn't have these little markings telling us what type of relationship it is. Let's go ahead and save our changes. And then we can close out of the relationships window. Now that we have our tables and relationships in place, we're ready to start creating our queries. To create all these queries, we'll go to our Create ribbon, and we're going to click on the Query Design button. That'll go ahead and give us a new query here. You might see a Properties pane open. You can go ahead and close that out if you need some more screen real estate. And we also have this Add Tables pane. I'm just going to go ahead and close that because I really don't need it. Our first query here is going to correspond with step 6a, and we're supposed to name our queries after the step in which they appear. So this is going to be query 6a. I'll go ahead and save the query by clicking the save icon at the top of the screen, and I'm just going to call this query 6a, and then I'll click OK. If we look at the instructions, we're trying to calculate the percentage of each country that was forested over time. We're supposed to list the country name, year, forested area, and land area, as well as the results from a calculated field that's going to tell us the percentage of that country that was forested in that year. So we're going to have to add some tables to our query in order to get the data that we need. I know from when we were exploring our tables earlier that the country name and the land area are in the countries table. So I'm going to go ahead and drag countries from the object pane on the left over into my query window here. For the year and the forested area, I know those are in the forest table. So I'm going to drag that over. And since we had a relationship configured between those two tables, we can see that line here. Let's go ahead and select the fields that we want to add to our query by double-clicking on them. So we want the country name, so I'm going to double-click on country name in the countries table. We want the year, which is going to be our data year field from the forest table. The forested area is the forest area from the forest table. And the land area is a land area from the countries table. So we have all of our basic fields here, but we're going to have to create that calculated field. So for that, I'm going to click in a blank column, and I'm going to use the Builder tool. On the Query Design ribbon, I'll go ahead and click the Builder button to bring up that tool here. The first thing that I want to do is give a name for this calculated field. And since it's supposed to tell us the percentage of forested area, let's go ahead and call this percentage, and I'm just abbreviating that, of forested area. And then after our name for that field, we want to put a colon. After the colon is where we're going to have our formula itself. Now I can just type in the field names, or I can do the table name dot field name. We normally would go and put the name parts inside of square brackets, but one of the advantages of using the builder tool here is that I can actually go and browse and choose from a menu the names of the fields that I want. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to expand out my database here. I'll go under tables. And for our formula, we are told that we want to have forests.forest area. So I'm just going to click on the forest table and then double click on the forest area field. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in a slash because we're trying to divide. And we're going to divide that by countries table, the land area field. So I'll just double click on that. I want to make sure that we get rid of this EXPR where that expression was supposed to go because we're not using it. So I just double click to select it and I can hit the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of it. Let's get rid of that extra space too. Go ahead and click OK. And then let's save our changes. Now we need to format the calculated field so that it's a percentage with 1 decimal place. So to do that, I'm going to right click on the field that we're trying to format and we'll go to properties. And you can see here I can specify a format. So I'm going to go to that menu and tell it that I want a percent, but I can't see any options here for how many decimal places I want. That's something that's not going to appear until I've run the query once. So I'm going to go ahead and on the query design ribbon, click the run button. That will allow me to see the results from my query. And I'm just going to resize some of these columns so we can see everything here. And now that I've run this, I can go back to design view and choose that I only want to have 1 decimal place. So on the left side of the home ribbon here, I'm going to click the button for design view. And now when I'm in the property sheet and clicked in that percentage of forested area field here, I have this decimal places option. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to be 1. Go ahead and run that again. And you can see our numbers are formatted as we would expect. The final thing that I need to do in my query here is sort by the calculated field in descending order. So let's head back to design view. And we're in our calculated field. We're clicked into there. So in the sort option, I'm going to choose that I want descending. Let's run this one more time to make sure that looks like we're going down for our values and percentage of forest area, and that does appear to be the case. Comparing to the instructions, we're supposed to have 1,194 records, and we can see that matches what we have down here. And 5 fields, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it looks like we're in good shape with Query 6a. Let's go ahead and save our changes and we'll close it out. Let's go ahead and move on to Query 6b now. To create this query, we're going to go back to the Create ribbon and click on Query Design. And the instructions tell us that we're going to summarize information about Asian countries from the year 2020. We want to create a query listing the country name. So I'm going to go ahead and drag over the countries table because I know that has the country name field. I want to go and grab the region name, which is in the regions table. So we'll add that. The land area, which is back in countries, and population, which is also in countries. So let's go and actually add those fields now that we've included their tables. We want to double click here on country name. We're going to grab region name, which I can double click on, or I could actually drag it down below to the grid if I wanted, whichever is better for you. We'll go ahead and grab the land area and the population. I'm going to go and close the add tables pane just to get it out of the way. And we need to do one more thing here with our fields, and that's to create a calculated field to find the population density, or the number of people per square kilometer. We'll go ahead and click in the blank field here, and we'll go into Builder like we did before. To name my field, I want to give it the name population density because that's a good descriptive name. So we'll type in population density and colon. Our formula here is going to be the population divided by the land area. I can use the view here where I expand out my database and then go into tables for that, but I can also type things in. So I'm going to do that route. When we're working with table and field names, we normally go and put them inside of square brackets. So I can go ahead and say that I want, with an open square bracket, countries, and then I'll just hit tab to autocomplete. To go and separate between the table name and the field name, I can either use a period, a dot, or an exclamation point. I'm more used to the dot notation, so I'm going to type in dot here, and then it's going to show me the different fields that are available in that table. So I want to do population, so I'll just double click to go and add that. And I want to divide, so I'll go ahead and type in a slash, and we'll do countries. I'm just hit tab to auto complete that, dot, land area. And you can see as I started to type in things on the keyboard that it narrowed my options. We'll go ahead and hit tab to auto complete there, and then we'll click OK. So I've got my fields all filled in. Let's go ahead and save this query. And we're going to call this one query 6b, since this is step 6b. We'll tell it OK. Let's go ahead and run our query to see where we're at. So I'm going to click the Run button on the Query Design ribbon here. You can see that our population density has a ton of decimal places, way more than we could reasonably use. And in fact, if we look at the instructions, we're supposed to have no decimal places. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to click the button here on the Home ribbon to go back to Design View. I'm going to right-click in the calculated column here and go to Properties. And as the instructions say, I'm going to format this as a standard type number. And I want to set the decimal places to 0 for none. Let's go ahead and save our changes. And then I will rerun my query. And you can see here we're down to just whole numbers now. We still have too many records, though. We have 199 records, and the instructions say that we should only have 45. So let's take care of that in Design View by creating some criteria. For our region, we want to go and apply criteria so that we're only seeing records for East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Western-Central Asia. So the criteria that I need to create have to go on this region name field. And what I can do is click in the box where it says criteria here for that row, and I can just enter all of my criteria in double quotes separated by the word or alternatively, I can put one region per row and just go down. I'm going to go ahead and do that option so it's a little easier to be able to see what's happening. So our first criteria entry here under region name is going to be East Asia. And then I'll go ahead and click below it. I'm going to type in Southeast Asia. And then finally, we'll do Western-Central Asia. And then I'll resize that column so we can see a little bit better. I'm going to run my query here. And we can see now we have 45 records. And if we look at our region names, you're just going to see the values that we said that we wanted. So East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Western-Central Asia. Let's save that. And we'll close query 6b. For query 6c, we're going to calculate some statistics on how much of each country was forested. We'll go back to the Create ribbon and click on Query Design. I'm going to get rid of the Add Tables pane here. And I want the country name, so I'm going to drag over the countries table. And to find out the average of the forested area, I'm going to have to drag over the forests table. We've got a relationship here between the two. So we're good there. Let's go and add the fields that we're going to need for this query. We want the country name, because that's going to tell us what country we're dealing with. We'll double click on that. And then I want to find the average of the forested area. So I'm going to double click to add the forest area field to my query here. Now, I'm supposed to find the average of forest area. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to make this a totals query. On the Query Design ribbon button here, I'm going to click the button that says Totals, and you can see we have a new row that pops up down below. Our country name is what we're going to group by, so I'll leave that one alone. But for the forest area, I'm going to go to its drop-down menu, and I'm going to choose the AVG, or average option, so we can view the average there. Let's go and run our query here so that we can see what results we have. And you can see we have our country name, and then we have its average of forested area. So how many square kilometers were forested across each of the years that we had data for. We want to go and format our field here with the forested area so that it has no decimal places, because again, all these decimal values aren't really helping us. Let's head back to Design View. I'm going to right click on the forest area column and go to Properties. We'll choose for format to do a standard type number, and we'll choose 0 for the number of decimal places. While I'm in Design View here, I'm also going to set things to sort by country name in ascending order. So I've got country name here, and I'm going to choose to sort in ascending order, and then we'll run this one more time. You can see that we have all of our countries here, and we have our forested area set up. And we've got 199 records appearing. So looks like we're in good shape there. We'll go ahead and save our query. We're going to call this one query 6C. And then we will close it out. For query 6D, we're going to summarize land usage on a regional basis. We'll go to the Create ribbon and click on Query Design again. Go ahead and get rid of these panes. And we want to list for each region name. So I'm going to drag over the regions table, and we'll just go ahead and double click on region right now. We're going to add the sum of its forested area. So I know that I'm going to have to grab the forest table, and we'll grab the forest area field. The sum of its land area, which I know is in the countries table. We'll go ahead and grab the land area. And the count of how many countries we have. So for the count of countries, I just need to choose one of the fields that's in the countries table. Going with the key tends to be a good choice for this. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on country abbreviation. And since we're trying to find things with sum and count, this is a totals query. So on the Query Design ribbon, I'll click the Totals button. And then I'm just going to go through and choose the appropriate options from this totals row. For the forest area here, I'm going to change that to sum. We're also going to sum our land area. And we're going to count the number of country abbreviations that we see. The instructions tell us that we only want to display records for the year 2020 and that we should not display the year in the result. In order to do that, I'm going to have to add the data year field to my query. So I'll double click on it. But I don't want to have it show. So I'm going to uncheck the box that says show. And we're just going to use it for criteria. So in the total row, instead of group by, I'm going to change it to be where. That basically says that we have this field that's going to be part of our query, but we're just using it so that we can put some criteria on it. The criteria for the data year field is going to be the year 2020, since that's the only year that we're interested in results for. So I'll go ahead and type in 2020 down in the criteria row under that field. And then let's go and run this and see what we get. You can see here that we have our 4 fields that the instructions tell us that we're supposed to have, and we've got 12 records. I'm just going to go with the default names here for our statistical fields. I could rename them to something else if I wanted to, but you don't specifically have to for this assignment. One thing that we do need to clean up, though, is that we want to go and format the sums as standard type numbers with no decimal places, just so that we have some consistency in how they appear. So let's head back to Design View. For the sums, I'm going to right click and go to Properties. As we've done before, under the Format section, I'm going to choose I want standard type format, and we'll say we want 0 decimal places for this field. And since we were working on forest area, I'll go ahead and click over in land area, and then we'll just do the same thing. Standard format, 0 decimal places. Let's rerun our query. We can see that things are cleaned up here. And since we've got the right number of records and fields, let's go ahead and save this. This is going to be query 6D. We'll click OK, and then close our query. With query 6E, we're also going to calculate some regional statistics. Let's head back to the Create ribbon and click on Query Design. Go ahead and get these panes out of the way. And here we're going to find for each region name the sum of its population. So for that, I'm going to need to add the regions table to get the region name. And we know that the population is in the countries table, so we'll go ahead and add that. And then let's just select the fields. We'll double click on region name and double click on population. In order to get the sum, we need the totals row option enabled. So on the Query Design ribbon, I'm going to click the Totals button here. And we're going to continue to group by the region name. And I'm going to choose the Sum option for population. So let's go ahead and run this. You can see we have our region name. We have our population, and we want to go and format that so it has commas in it as a standard type number, so it's a little bit easier for us to read. So we'll go and head back to Design View. We'll go ahead and right-click on our column here, go into Properties, and we're going to format as a standard type number with no decimal places. And then we'll run that again. And you can see there's one more thing that we're going to have to do. We have the 2 fields that the hint in the instruction tells us, but we only have 12 records, and we're supposed to have 13. If we go back and look at the instructions, we can see that we're supposed to include all regions, even if they have no countries. When we were typing things in, we created an Antarctica region, but there's no countries in Antarctica, so it doesn't show up here. We need to go and change the join properties on our query in Design View so that Antarctica will actually show up here. So let's head back to Design View, and I'm going to click on this join line here between our 2 tables, and then I'm going to right-click and go to Join Properties. Right now, this is set to what's known as an inner join, where we only include rows where the join fields from both tables are equal. What we're going to want is a type of outer join. We're going to actually choose option 2 here. So we want to include all records from the regions table and only those from the countries table where the joined fields are equal. This is going to display all of our regions then, including Antarctica. So we'll click OK. You can see that the little symbol here has changed. Below the infinity, it's now an arrow versus just it was just kind of a bold line before. Let's go ahead and run this. And now you can see that we have Antarctica displaying here. And since there are no countries there, it doesn't have any data for the population. So that just appears to be blank. Let's save this. This one's going to be query 6E. And we'll click OK. And then we'll close it out. For our final query, 6F, we're going to make use of some SQL code that's given as part of the instructions. To get things started, we're going to go back into Query Design. So we'll go to the Create ribbon and click on Query Design. But once I get in here, I'll just close those panes to get them out of the way. I don't want to go and drag any fields over. Instead, you can see I have this option to go to SQL View. Right now we have just a select statement, and it's not actually even selecting anything. What we're going to do is bring in the select statement that's given in the instructions. The best way to do that, just to avoid any potential for problem, is to go and copy and paste. Although, if you absolutely have to, you can type it in. Let's go back to our browser, and I'm going to just drag to go and select our query here. I'll right-click and tell it that I want to copy it to the clipboard. And then if I go back to Access, I can get rid of what's here right now. We'll select it and just hit the Delete key. And then I'm going to right-click and choose Paste. So what we're going to have here is we're going to display the data year field and the sum of the forest area field and we're going to grab data from the regions and countries table. and then we're going to go through and sort things in ascending order by the year. So if we go ahead and run this, you can see the output. We're getting the year, and then we're getting the amount of forested area in that year worldwide. We'll go ahead and click Save. We're going to call this one Query 6F, and we'll click OK and close out of it. We still have a couple more things that we need to do in Access before we move on. Let's do step 7 now, where we're going to create a form with a subform using the Form Wizard. For this, we'll go to the Create ribbon, and under the Form section, I'm going to click the Form Wizard button. That's going to open up this dialog box here. And we're supposed to display the full region name in the main form. So that's going to tell me that I need to go to the regions table, and I want to select the region name field, and I'll click just the single arrow to add it to the right. And then I'm going to also need to display a data sheet with all countries table fields. So I'll go to the countries table, and I'm just going to click the double right arrow to add them all. Let's go ahead and click Next to continue on in the wizard. And we want to have the full region name be in the main form. If we take a look at things here, you can see that we have this form with subforms listed. Our main form is the outer box, and so we've got our region name there. And our subform is this inner box, and this is where we have our fields from the countries table. So this is actually what we want here. We want to view data by regions. So we'll click Next. And we're supposed to display things as a data sheet, so we'll leave that option chosen here. We'll click Next again. And we want to name things as given in the instructions. For the main form, we're going to call that region data. And for our subform, we're going to call that region data subform. We're going to just leave the default option here that we're going to open the form to view or enter information when we're done, and we'll click Finish. And you can see here now we have our form. So if I go and use the left and right buttons, we'll advance to our different regions. And then you can see that we have all the countries within that region appearing in the subform. So we've got things set up now with step 7 for our form with subform. Let's go ahead and close out of the form now. Next, let's go ahead and create a report to display the results of Query 6b. For this, on the Create ribbon, I'm going to go to the Report Wizard button under the Report section. For this first step of the wizard here, I'm going to have to choose Query 6b from the dropdown, and then I want to add all of the fields to my query. So I'll click the double right button to go ahead and move them all over to the selected field side. I'll click Next, and the instructions say that I want to view by region. So we'll go ahead and choose the View by Regions option here. So we'll have the region name up top, and then we'll have details on all the countries within that region down below the heading. We'll click Next. We don't need to add any additional grouping levels based on what the instructions tell us. So I'll just click Next. And on this screen, we want to go and sort by country name in ascending order. From the drop-down, I'm going to choose country name. This button to the right of my field is a toggle for if I want ascending or descending order. I'm going to choose ascending based on what the instructions say. And then I'll click Next. We're told that we should do a stepped layout in portrait page orientation. So we're good here. We'll go ahead and click Next. And on the final screen, I'm going to change the name of my report to be Asian Summary. We're just going to leave the default option as previewing the report here, and we'll click Finish. You can see here that we have print preview for our report, and we have the information for Query 6b. But if you notice here, some of these columns are displayed very wide. They're taking up a lot of screen real estate. And so much so that we actually are having data that we can't see. Population isn't wide enough to display the digits, so we get all these pound signs, and in many cases the population density is also getting cut off. So we need to go and fix those columns so that we can see everything. Let's go ahead and close Print Preview, and we're going to fix things in layout view. Right now we're in design view. We could go through and fix things here, but layout view is going to be a little bit easier. So I'll go ahead and switch over to layout view. Let's go ahead, first of all, and reposition the country name and the land area over to the left a little bit so that they're not chewing up as much space on the right side of our screen. What I'm going to do here is click on the country name heading, and then I'll hold down the Shift key on my keyboard. I'm going to click into where we have our country names. I'm also going to click on land areas heading and then the values. And then I'm just going to kind of drag over and then release my mouse. You can see that's going to reposition things further to the left. I'm going to go ahead then and choose the population heading and data. And I'm just going to go ahead and drag and resize that column. Don't need it to be quite that wide, so we'll just shift everything over. And then I'm also going to resize the population density. And in fact, let's go ahead and make population a little bit narrower so that we can see the full title for population density. If we take a look at things here now, we can still see all of our rows, and we can now actually see all of our columns too. We can see all the information, things aren't getting cut off. So we'll go ahead and save our changes and close out of the report. The final thing that we want to do in Access is to run the compact and repair database utility. This will shrink our file size just so that we don't have any wasted space. Let's go to the database tools ribbon here, and I'm going to click on compact and repair database. Oftentimes you might see a message that the file is already in use. That's especially the case if you're working with something that's being synced to a cloud storage service like OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox, or if you have antivirus software. If you get this dialog box, that's okay. Just click out of the OK button to get out of it here and just go on. But it's kind of a good habit that when you're done with the database, go ahead and try to run the compact and repair, especially if you've made a lot of changes to the data, just because what you can find is that Access databases will sometimes get a little bloated, and that can help shrink things, especially if you're trying to submit a file, for example. At this point, we are done with Access, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of my Access database. Now we're ready to move on to the PowerPoint portion of our project. Let's go to the Start menu here, and we'll go ahead and open up PowerPoint. And we'll click the button here to create a blank presentation. I'm going to save my file, and we'll put this on the desktop. So I'm going to go down to More Options here, and then we'll click Browse. And I'm just going to choose my desktop here. And I'm going to name the file as given in the instructions. So it's going to be exam review 2 _ FAP _ last name _ first name. Again, go ahead and type in your own name there rather than last name, first name. And we're going to do .pptx as the extension because this is a PowerPoint presentation. Go ahead and click to save. And we've got our file started now. Our first slide is supposed to be a title slide. We can see that we actually have a title slide here, in part because that's what it looks like. But on the home ribbon, if we go under slide layout, we can see this is a title slide. Let's go ahead and give a title for our presentation here. I'm going to call this Worldwide Forests. We're supposed to list our full name. So we'll do like first name, last name. And then we want to have our course section. So we'll say CS101 section, and then what section number we're in. And we're supposed to have an automatically updating date. For this, I'm going to go to the Insert ribbon. And towards the right side of the screen, you can see this little button here that looks like a calendar with a clock on it under the text section. That's for date and time. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to choose the format here that goes and spells out month, day, year. And then I'm going to click the box so that it automatically updates, and I'll click OK. Let's go ahead and create another slide. So I'm going to click on the New Slide button here. And we actually have here as a title and content as the type that was created. I know just from looking at the layout here, and that's what the instructions told me that I wanted. We're supposed to title this as Worldwide Forest Area. And for the content section at the bottom, we're told that we want to add the chart from the forest area chart sheet in the chart.xlsx workbook that we downloaded as part of the data files. I'm going to minimize PowerPoint here. On my desktop, I've got the folder where we had our data files. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And then I'll double click on the chart.xlsx file to open that up in Excel. I'm on my forest area chart sheet here, and I can go ahead and click to select the entire chart. I'm just going to right click and I'm going to tell it to copy. And then I'll switch over to PowerPoint and I'm going to select my content area by clicking on it, and then I'll right click and I'm just going to go ahead and choose this first option here to go ahead and paste. You can see that I get my chart in here. I'll go ahead and close out of Excel at this point, just so that that's out of our way. Now, let's start taking a look at the analysis questions. There are 5 questions that are provided in the instructions. You should answer 3 of them, although for this video, we'll actually take a look at all 5. Before we get to that though, I'm going to go ahead and close that Windows Explorer window from where we were looking at our downloaded files. For our analysis questions, we're going to answer them one to a slide, and we're going to use title and content slides for those. So let's go ahead and add a new slide to our presentation. In the title area of the slide, we should indicate which question we're trying to answer. So we'll start off here with question 12A. That question asks if there's any relationship between the land area of a region and the area of its forests, other than that larger land areas allow for larger forests. And we're supposed to explain our reasoning. For this question, I went back and looked at the query results that we had in the Access database, especially query 6D, where we were going through and summing up land area and forest area for each region. And basically what I found is there is no relationship between the land area of a region and the amount that is forested. Trying to go through and convert things, especially to a percentage basis, what we found is things are really kind of all over the place. If there was a strict relationship, we would expect that as we had more land mass, we would see the percentage go through and consistently either stay relatively the same. If we had a linear relationship, we might expect to see it go through and grow. If we had some sort of perhaps exponential relationship, we're not really seeing any of those. The values are just kind of seemingly random. And that suggests something else is at play rather than just the land mass. So let's go ahead and explain that. If there was a strong correlation, we would expect that larger land masses would always have larger forested areas, and that isn't the case. In fact, what we saw when I looked at the data was that Northern Africa and Western Central Asia were fairly much in the middle of the pack for their land area, but they were towards the bottom for the amount of forested area. So I'm just going to write that out. Despite having mid-sized land masses, Northern Africa and Western Central Asia have some of the smallest forests. And then I'm just going to try to explain that, well, I think climate is likely a large factor at play here. So it seems likely that climate impacts the amount of forested area in a region. So we've got our first analysis question down now. Let's continue on to question 12B, which asks how might industrialization affect a country's forests? At least in the initial stages of development for a country, we tend to see that forests will shrink because they go through and give us resources that we can use for building the economy and provide land to go and develop. So let's go ahead and write that. We'll say that as countries develop, they tend to increase their extraction of natural resources like wood to provide energy, building materials, and room for development. And this is in fact what we saw happen in the US and in West Virginia in particular around 1900. Basically, forests get decimated. leads to the destruction of forests, such as what happened in the U.S. around 1900. Now, as economies tend to become more developed, they'll often go through and put more value on conservation and the environment. So things will tend to reverse themselves. We'll start to see areas become reforested over time. So we'll say that highly developed countries tend to develop greater concerns for the environment. Areas frequently become reforested later. Let's continue on to question 12C, which asks us to list at least 2 examples of environmental problems that can be caused or worsened by deforestation. In the US, we actually saw a lot of the environmental problems from deforestation over 100 years ago, and they led to the passage of what's known as the Weeks Act in 1911 that facilitated the creation of national forests in the eastern U.S., including West Virginia's Monongahela National Forest in 1920. The Weeks Act was designed to address 2 major problems. The first one was that without all these trees in place, you would have a ton of water runoff because there was nothing to really stop the water from running off or to absorb it. So it caused problems with downstream flooding. Let's go ahead and document that as part of our answer to this question. We'll say that when trees are cut down, there is increased water runoff. This can cause downstream flooding. Another problem was that there was a lot of woody debris known as slash that's left over once you go and log an area. And this tends to be pretty fire prone. You can end up with big wildfires that will go through, burn all of that woody debris, but a lot of times they'll even go further than that. They'll actually go and burn off the soil that's there. That's why in some of the mountainous parts of West Virginia, you'll go through and see things that are just kind of left rocky. And that's basically because everything else that was above, all the dirt that had been there, burned off in wildfires and forest fires. So let's go and mention that. It's not uncommon for the leftover debris from cut areas to ignite, causing large fires and destroying what soil and plants remain. In a more modern context, we're concerned about climate change. So trees help absorb carbon dioxide. Fewer trees can exacerbate climate change. Let's move on to question 12D. For this question, we're told that in the U.S., whether trees in national forests should be treated as a crop to be harvested or as a resource to be conserved has been a controversial topic. We're asked where we stand on this issue, and we should also explain our thinking as part of the answer. This one's kind of a personal opinion type question here. I'm going to note in my answer that in many parts of the country, national forests serve as an important location for recreation. And we'll just say that visitors want to see scenic views and enjoy nature, not see clear-cut, logged terrain. So, some conservation there, but not exclusively conservation, because forests do age, and older forests often can be detrimental for wildlife. Oftentimes we need to see different types of forest to support different types of wildlife species. Not harvesting trees also means we can't benefit from the materials and renewable resources they can provide. If we don't harvest trees, we can't get the wood from them. We can't go through and really get any of the other benefits that the trees can give us. So basically, kind of my view here is there seems to be room for a middle ground, allowing some logging, but doing so in a way that minimizes impacts on recreational use of the forests. Go ahead and fix our spelling error there. Finally, question 12E asks us to list at least 2 steps that can help reduce deforestation. Well, recycling is one obvious thing. Recycling wood products such as paper reduces the need for additional trees to be cut down. We can also go and replant trees in deforested areas. That will go through and in aggregate help cut down on deforestation. So we'll say that trees can be replanted in deforested areas, and then we can go and protect forests through parks and national forests and state forests and things like that. So we'll say existing forests can be protected and managed in government-run parks and forests. With the analysis questions out of the way, let's take a look at how we can clean up the appearance of our presentation by applying some formatting. The first thing that we're going to do is to apply one design theme of our own choice to all the slides. So let's go to the design ribbon here, and under the themes, I'm going to expand out and take a look here. We can hover over some different options to see what they look like. I'm going to go ahead and choose banded, but you're welcome to go ahead and pick whatever style you happen to like for your own presentation. Next, we're told that we want to apply an animation of our choice to the worldwide forest area chart. So I'm going to go to my slide here, click on the chart, and then I'll go to the animations ribbon, and I'm just going to pick one that I happen to like. I tend to be kind of a fan of fly-in, so I'll go ahead and click that, and you can see the preview there. We're also going to apply animations on a slide level with transitions so that we can go through and see that little animation run as we advance from one slide to another. We want to apply slide transitions to all the slides. So I'm going to go click over in the pane on the left-hand side here with my slides. I'm just going to click on one slide, but if I go and hit Control A on my keyboard, you can see it selects all the slides. I'll go to the transitions ribbon here, and I'm just going to pick a style that I like. Let's take a look at wipe here. That looks like a nice transition, so we'll go ahead and apply that. And you can see now I have the little animation icon appear on every slide because we've added that transition to them all. Continuing on, we want to modify our slide master to add the forest.jpg image that was part of the data files to the top right corner of our slides. To work with the slide master, I'm going to go to the view ribbon, and under the master view section, I'll click on slide master. You can see that there are different slides here corresponding with each of the layouts that's available to us. We want to go to the topmost one, which is kind of the base style for this theme. And we're going to go to the insert ribbon. We'll go to pictures from this device, and we're going to go into the folder where we extracted our data files from. So on my desktop, I've got the data files here. I'm going to go ahead and select the forest.jpg image, and we'll click Insert. You can see it goes and adds that image to our slide. The instructions tell us that we want to size things so that they're 1 inch by 1 inch. So with the image selected here, I'm going to go ahead and adjust the size, and it's square. So by default, when I go and change the height to be 1 inch, PowerPoint's also going to resize the width to be 1 inch. I'm just going to take the image and drag it to the top right corner where I want it to be. If you take a look at the various layouts, you'll see that most of them have that image now. There are some that don't though, like the title slide layout, and that's okay. As long as it's on our topmost parent, it'll flow through to all of our standard ones, stuff like title and content. So we're in pretty good shape there. Let's go ahead and click Close Master View to get out. And you can see now that that image is on our different title and content slides. And to wrap things up, we're going to go and add a footer to our slides. I just want to go ahead and click on a slide. And I normally want to do this so that I'm not on the title slide, and you'll see why here in a moment. But when I'm clicked on a slide, I'm going to go to the Insert ribbon, And I'm going to click on the header and footer button here towards the right side of the ribbon. The instructions say that we want to go through and add our name, an automatically updating date, and the slide number to the footer of all slides except the title slide. So on the slide tab here, I'm going to check the box for date and time, and we'll just leave it under the update automatically option. We'll check the box for slide number, and for footer, we're going to go through and put our name there. I'll type in first name, last name here for our solution here, just so that it's obviously a generic name and not my name. I want to go and make sure that I check the don't show on title slide box so that it doesn't appear there. And then I'm going to click apply to all. You can see that on our slides, we now have this little bit of text down at the bottom. And since we did not apply it to the title slide, it does not appear there. And that's what we need to do for the PowerPoint portion of the project. And with that, we're actually done with our assignment here. Now that we're done with the project, we do want to make sure that we go and save our file. If this was the real exam, you would now want to close out of Access if you still had it open, and PowerPoint, and go and submit your files. Since this is just a review project though, you don't need to turn in anything unless your instructor has asked you to submit it to be counted as a participation project. If you have any questions, please check with your section instructor or get assistance with CS101 Open Lab. Thanks for watching, and good luck on your test.